Welcome to the Prophecy Club. If you were to ask the typical person on the street, hey, how long is it until Jesus returns? Probably 80% of the people out there, maybe even a lot of the sinners, would say, oh, he could return at any moment. Oh, it's not very long. Okay. If it's not very, I don't agree with them, but if it's not very long until Jesus returns, then we ought to be seeing some of the signs associated with his return, like, let me read Isaiah 24, verse 1. Behold, the Lord maketh the earth empty. That means the people there are pretty much all dead. And maketh it waste, and turneth it upside down, and scattereth abroad the inhabitants thereof. That means that when Jesus is getting really close to return, one of the things we'll see is the earth will turn upside down. Oh, Stan, you got that wrong. Oh, really? Let's go on down to verse 19. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard. It shall be removed like a cottage. In other words, it's going to move like a hammock swinging in the wind. He makes a new heaven and a new earth wherein dwelleth righteousness. But one of the signs, and this is what we're talking about for the next several broadcasts, is that if Jesus is getting close to returning, then we should be able to see that the earth is getting close to turning upside down. Oh, Stan, we're nowhere close to that. Well, now, wait a minute. Did you realize that the magnetic north is moving? And matter of fact, I would even say that the earth is in the process now of turning upside down. You didn't hear about that. Well, that's what we're about to discuss for the next several programs, is how it is already in the process of turning upside down. Now, the guest speaker that we had in has an awesome DVD. It's part of our gift offer. His name is Lloyd Carpenter. He studied the coming pole shift for over 20 years. His topics include the Earth's wobble, Earth tsunamis, earthquakes, weather pattern changes, tornadoes, hurricanes, mudslides, floods, droughts, volcanoes, plate tectonics, sea floor spreading, hot spots, melting ice, the ring of fire, and a whole lot more. The name is called The Coming Pole Shift, and it's normally valued at $30, but right now you can get 3 DVDs in what we call our catastrophe gift offer. You get End of Times by Augusto Perez, The Coming Pole Shift by Lloyd Carpenter, and Signs in the Sun, Moon, and the Stars by John Moore, all for a gift of just $25. prophecyclub.com or 785-266-1112. Let's go on over and listen to The Coming Pole Shift by Lloyd Carpenter.
We were the only Christians in the whole room, and that was the night that they introduced their atheist national anthem. And it went something like this. There is no God. We hate God. God never did anything for anybody. And here's a book with all the miracles God ever did. And it's got a bunch of blank pages. And they thought they were being funny. And this national anthem that they wrote, their hymn, if you will, was written by some people from Hustler magazine. And they were there that night, and I said to Madeline, she said, what are you going to be on the same show I'm going to be on for? And I said, well, I've discovered this big face on the Pacific Ocean floor, Madeline, that covers half of our planet, and it has a crystal clear eyeball with pupil and sclera, and that doctors have said that it is anatomically correct, and that I realized that you were a code breaker in World War II, and that you personally were one of those people that helped us win World War II because of the code breaking work you did. And if anybody can see things in things, I know it's you. You want to see it? And she went, okay. And so I pulled out the headline, Lloyd Carpenter Sees the Face of God, with the map, and she looked at it and she said, oh my God. Can I have that to take back to my office in Austin? And I said, only if you promise to hang it on your wall, whether you believe it or not, and just show it to people as a novelty. And she says, that is fascinating. And some of the people from Hustler magazine came around, and they were going, who is this guy, and what's he doing in here anyway in the first place? And who are you, and why do you think you can bring this kind of stuff in here? And Madeline was very nice to me in every way. And I said, Madeline, when my subordinates act up, I tend to ask them to kind of, back off a little bit. And she says, get out of here, boys, get out of here. She was very nice. I gave her the newspaper article that was on a hard styrofoam. I don't know whether she ever hung it in her office or not. And that story has absolutely nothing to do with the earth tipping over on its axis, but it's such a good story. I had to tell it. Well, actually, it did happen on the winter solstice when they say the world's going to come to an end in 2012. But I thought I'd just share that with you tonight because it's just one of those stories. But the Mayans say that the earth will tremble and has trembled for 3 days. It says it happened in the past, that the sun did not shine the last time it happened on land for 26 years. And that is a scenario very similar to what the Bible says will happen, in that the earth will become dark. People will be afraid to venture out of their homes. You won't be able to call your local mayor or your local governor or call the police and say, can you send out a squad car? The earth just tipped over on its axis, and we want to know what type of municipal services are available. That's not going to happen. Because if the scenario is that many houses have burned down, if automobiles no longer work, the person you're going to trust is going to be the tough guy in the neighborhood who knows how to keep the other guys with guns out of the way. It's going to be more like tribal, because guns will still work. As a matter of fact, after the earth tips over on its axis, that is the period that people call the Great Tribulation. It's going to be a very difficult time, and it's going to last for at least 7 years, according to the Bible. And the first half of it's going to be simply terrible. And after that, it's going to be a little better, but still awful. And then after that, then hopefully things will settle down, and we will have that well-marbled earth, and then Jesus will come here and set it up as his footstool. But the Bible also indicates that when the earth tips over on its axis, that a third of the earth will die immediately. And that is the fish at sea and the animals at sea and the animals on land and all of the humans and all of the plants. And that after the earth tips over on its axis and that event has happened, the settling down period may happen over, it doesn't make it real clear in the Bible. Some scholars believe it might be a period of months, it might be a period of years, but in any case, another third of the earth will die from disease, from the after effects, from the terrible cold, from being suffered to the exposure, from a lack of food that's available, from a lack of heat, and just anything other that can be called an after effect from that initial time. And that, in effect, after that, what you'll have is a situation where the earth will have 1/3 of its inhabitants that are left. And in a way, the Bible says that those people that are left in some ways are going to be worse off than the ones that got to die in the first place. Because it's going to be hard times. It's going to be pioneer times. It's going to be difficult leading up to that 1,000-year reign of Christ. But also, there is every indication that of those that make it through, that they will have a longer lifespan, that they will have a healthier life, that there will be almost no sin on the earth. It doesn't say there'll be no sin. It just says that it will be a new earth with some really, less crime, a place where the vegetation is better and everything about it. And so that is the scenario of the earth tipping over on its axis. It's something that we can look at. The Hopis talk about the earth tipping over on its axis. They talk about what happens with mountains plunging into the sea. Sound familiar? They talk about what happens on the land and how the cold and lifeless space that's regarding it and relating to it. In Norse mythology, it also talks about a similar scenario. It talks about the fire and its leaping, and that it will lick heaven itself. There'll be so much fire on the earth. And simplistically put, we were even taught back in Bible school as children, the earth was destroyed once by water, and that in the end times it will be destroyed by fire. And we always thought that was going to be just, maybe nuclear weapons or something. But we now know that volcanoes could be part of that. We now know that because of the change of the magnetic fields and what happens to the electricity on the earth could be part of that. So there's many things out there. The Quran says that the earth will roll up like a scroll also. And when I look at people who witness to people of other religions, I'm always amazed how often we tend to be separatist rather than unifying. And I like finding similar belief systems in other religions to mine. I work and have been on staff as a volunteer for about 15 years now with the U.S. Center for World Mission in Pasadena, California. And the gentleman who started the U.S. Center for World Mission, Dr. Winter, has a teaching where he says that you speak to people on their own level. He learned that from the book of Romans, because when in Rome, do as the Romans. And who said that? That was Paul. Well, Dr. Winter says that if you're going to witness to somebody in darkest Africa, you don't go up to them and say, hey, I want to tell you about this white guy with a beard, and his name's God, and he's Jesus, and he's going to save your soul, so let's get to it. They're not going to listen. You want to find a common ground for communication. The art of communication, that is part of the art of communication. And so what Dr. Winter says to say is, who do you say created the earth? And maybe the African would say, oh, everybody knows Mbagwa created the earth. And then you say, did you know that Mbagwa had a son? That's your opening door, okay? Later you can send in the Wycliffe people, they can do their Bible translation, and you'll have Bible-believing black preachers in that land. And that's how we proselytize. And in the Quran, we see things where now so much bad-mouthing of the Arab people, and I've been to Egypt 2 times, and you will not find more wonderful people, but they have idiots there, just as all over the earth they have idiots. And they have people that do things that are not in their Quran. They're just crazy people, okay? But in general, it's a wise thing to say, oh, you believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? So do I. Open door, right? And then you can have an open line of communication. And maybe you'll talk about how they don't believe that Jesus is God, and you believe that Jesus is God. But at a certain point, if you get them into the Bible more than they're in the Quran, you can make that proselytizing be a healthy, comfortable thing for all involved. I don't like how many Christian religions tend to not tell the truth about what other religions believe. As a young Baptist, I thought the preacher was right. Everybody who's Catholic is going to fry in hell like bacon, and everybody else, the Pentecostals and the Episcopalians and the Presbyterians, they're going to be lucky if they make it there at all. They'd be way better off if they were Baptist, especially if they were Southern Baptist, okay? And then I learned later that, thank God, the Baptists started becoming more open-minded, and with Billy Graham and his teachings and stuff like that, we started realizing that Billy Graham was right when he said, you know, when I get to heaven, I'm going to be really glad I made it, and I'm going to be really surprised that certain people I thought was going to be there aren't there, and I'm going to be shocked that people that I thought would never make it are there, and I'm going to be thrilled that I made it. And so that's the proper way to teach about that. Because when you talk to a person who knows Islam, you might want to say to them, does the Quran teach about Armageddon? And they'll go, oh, sure. Where's that going to happen? Oh, on the plain of Megiddo. Muhammad said it's going to happen on the plain of Megiddo. Oh, really? And is there a savior of the world? Is there somebody going to come back and save the world? And they have to answer if they know their Quran. They will say, sure, everybody knows the savior. They're going to save the world. You say, who is that? And they'll go, Michael. So, who is Michael? Who does the Quran teach as Michael? And they'll go, Jesus Christ. You mean to tell me the Quran teaches that Jesus Christ is going to come back and save the world? Yes. They do not believe that he is God incarnate. But don't tell me that's not common ground for communication. Many times in our work to bring people to God, it is the words we use and our attitudes concerning it that cause divisiveness or cause unity. And I recommend to everyone, if you really, really mean it, that you want to do what Matthew 28 says and to go out and preach the gospel to all men, then you have to do it in a manner that creates communication. In the Upanishads, it says the world's going to tip over on its axis. It says the same thing in so many of the religions that I've read in this world that it's just startling. Now, I told you earlier that I was going to tell you exactly what heaven is like. It could be a 5-hour speech, but it's not necessary. Heaven is exactly, and I defy anybody here to prove me wrong, heaven is exactly like earth with no bad anything. And I'll tell you what hell is like. Hell is exactly like earth with no good anything. And I'll tell you where heaven is located. My Bible tells me that heaven is right there. Just a minute. No, it's right there. Okay? And hell is, it tells me it's in the bowels of the earth. That actually the location of hell is right, I have to move my foot, excuse me. Right there. Okay? Is the earth hollow? It seems like a crazy question, but there have been people that are respected. I don't believe that the earth is hollow for sure because I don't know. I'm basically giving you secondary evidence based on what other people have taught. But many people that are very respected believe that the earth is hollow. And they believe that because they believe the other planets are hollow, the ones that are solid, and they believe that maybe some of the gaseous planets are hollow, and most scientists believe that the moon might be hollow, and many scientists believe that Mars might be hollow. So the idea of the earth being hollow is not so absurd when you see people that have had great reputations who believe so, some of them having ruined their reputations from believing so, one of them being a very senior officer in the United States Navy, very respected, who in 1947 said, I've been up there, I'm going to go back. If Cook could discover the North Pole and go there, and other people have gone there, I'm going, and this time I'm taking planes and I'm taking people with me. And that was Admiral Byrd. And when Admiral Byrd came back, the New York Times asked him for an interview. And they said, could we have an exclusive? And Admiral Byrd said, certainly. And they said, Admiral Byrd, what happened when you went up to the North Pole? And Admiral Byrd said, well, first, I think I was there. I'm pretty sure I was there. But in all honesty, I don't know how anybody could say they were there for certain because the compasses didn't work. Okay? This was before satellites. And so what we did is several hundred miles before we got to the North Pole, we just basically started following the pole star, and we started following the heavenly stars, and we estimated how much further it might be. And so I'm pretty darn sure we made it to the North Pole. And he said, okay. Well, what did you find when you got there? And he says, well, you know, we found mountains and we found very interesting terrain, but also I found a great crevasse, like a cave, and I went in, and after I went in with my people for about, half a mile, we ran into these two guys with gray suits. And they said, hello, Admiral Byrd. Very happy to meet you. And I said, you know me? And they said, oh, we know all about you. We knew you were coming here, and we know what's going on the earth. Come with us, and we'll take you in. And we went in about another mile, and it was the most beautiful thing. We saw a land of wonderful vegetation, of beautiful, rich, lovely lakes and rivers, of terrific fields and pastures and animals. And they had grapes there that were the size of watermelons. They had tomatoes there that weighed 35 pounds and were so delicious. And they had no need for fertilization because their soil was so rich. And it is truly, it was like a Garden of Eden on earth. And it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And I'm going back. And the people who worked with Admiral Byrd in the Navy, the other senior officers, and many people in the press were pretty unified in their agreement. Admiral Byrd has gone crazy. The guy's lost his mind. I mean, he's totally lost it, okay? The poor guy. I don't know, his brain must have froze when he went up there. We don't know for sure even what happened to Admiral Byrd after that, except that we know his reputation was ruined. But some people believed that Admiral Byrd was telling the truth, and one of the reasons why is because there have always been people out there that were obsessed with the center of the earth and what's down there. As a matter of fact, Adolf Hitler was very obsessed with there being a livable habitat at the center of the earth, described very similarly to how Admiral Byrd described it, and evidently Hitler spent millions of dollars sending expeditions to try to find entranceways because part of his master plan was to take over the whole outside of the earth and the inside of the earth, and then he was going to go inside the earth and rule the world from inside the earth. Very fitting, because Hitler wanted to do this. We know now, we don't know whatever happened as far as whether the Nazis ever found an entranceway. We know they tried to, and a lot of it's myth now about what happened and a lot of it's lore. Admiral Byrd showed an image very similar to this with a central sun about 800 miles in diameter, and he showed how the magnetic fields would be affected. And even going back 120 years before Admiral Byrd, there were people making maps about the center of the earth and showing the terrain and showing the lakes and showing rivers and what's there and what major cities were there. This particular map even shows a sun and a moon inside the center of the earth, and that in effect is what causes the heat, which causes the outside of our crust to warm up and cause volcanic activity. Some people came back, they made globes, right, showing with a big giant openings at the North and South Pole. Other people came back and they said, that's not the way it is. I was at the center of the earth, and I can tell you that there's no central sun, that basically the sun shines through the large openings at the poles, and that it heats up the inside of the earth and causes all that beautiful vegetation, which I agree is there. And they would debate about this, and they would go out on tour, and then other people would make really ridiculous graphics of the earth, and some of them were so stupid that nobody in their right mind would believe them, like this dumb one here from NASA. Actually, this is a NASA graphic of the Earth from space showing the North Pole. But NASA explained that that's cloud cover, and that was an anomaly, the way that it made that perfect sphere at the top. And in this particular case, I think, I believe that NASA's telling the truth, because we all know that right there where that circle is there at the North Pole is really a dragon's head with crystal clear eye, teeth, mouth, nose, and that's what the terrain is. And that maybe Admiral Byrd, if he ever did really even do that, it had to be a crevasse where he was able to go in, sort of like that movie, what was that movie, Shangri-La movie? Lost Horizon, Ronald Coleman, where he got to go in and marry Perry Mason's secretary and fall in love and live happily ever after. Well, that's sort of the story there about the center of the earth, showing what Admiral Byrd believed to be the case. But at a certain point, they kept showing maps and kept debating it throughout most of the 18th and 19th and 20th, the 19th and 20th century, until we have what we have is, after Admiral Byrd made his announcement, some people started selling tickets and saying, we're going to start a travel agency, and we're all going up to the North Pole, and we're going to go inside the earth where there is no war and there's no problem, because one of the things Admiral Byrd said is that the people that live inside the earth, not only do they think we're crazy, but they think we're going to destroy ourselves. And he said the reason they believe that is because they started sending out their own flying saucers after we started blowing up nuclear bombs in the deserts. And so here we come in close up on this map, and we can see Admiral Byrd's supposed flight pattern. We can see saucers. We can see the terrain inside. But, this is just, to me, humorous. All right? It's interesting, because you and I really know that what's inside the earth really is different kinds of mountains and all kinds of slaves, so that the devil can, break up all the rocks and constantly have that. Nobody knows for sure what's inside the earth, okay? All you can do is speculate, but my Bible tells me that in the bowels of the earth is hell. I'm not certain how that is, but most everything else is speculation. But a lot of people believe that Mars is hollow, and they believe it's hollow because of the images that they've seen. They believe that the moon is hollow because when things have hit it, it actually rings like a bell. And so unless it was hollow, it would not have a actual tonal quality to it. So the idea that the earth is hollow is not as absurd as we might seem, but to this point there is no specific evidence to that effect. I'm more worried about nuclear power plants in a way than I am Yellowstone erupting, because I think that nuclear power plants and nuclear weapons themselves can lead as a catalyst to the volcanic activity that talks about in the book of Revelation, that can lead to many of the things happening there. We know about the polar ice caps melting, and you talk about that ice cap that is the size of Rhode Island. I mistakenly said New Hampshire earlier, but I wrote about the size of Rhode Island breaking off, and then that Ross Ice Shelf doing the very same thing. Well, that is very startling, what's happening to our planet. But nuclear power plants are very dangerous. And when I was back in college, we had contests, speech contests, and I wanted to show my position about nuclear power and nuclear war. So what I did is I entered this contest called the Karen Silkwood Awards, and that was just to explain what I thought the dangers were. And they gave me this plaque after I won it. And basically all that says is I'm not an expert on nuclear power and nuclear war, but at least I know enough about it that the people that are thought that I deserve to be able to talk about it. At the end of this speech that I gave concerning this contest, I described what was known at the time and still called a nuclear winter, sort of like the scenario that's shown at the Yellowstone eruption pictorial we looked at before, where 16-degree drop in temperature around the Earth would create black clouds all over the Earth. And I said that one person can create change. We must. That it only takes the first white-dotted black domino to influence all the other dominoes in a row, to fall in obeisance to its one slight tap. That one person does have the ability to make change. And unless that happens, the earth will become as black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon will become as blood. This is the location of the nuclear power plants around the world. The United States has a lot of them, and so does all of Europe. There's less in China, less in South America. Japan's become totally dependent on nuclear weapons. At the end of World War II, they decided they were not going to be so dependent on fossil fuels anymore, and so now they have a lot of nuclear power. France is really one of the most dependent nations on nuclear power in the world. 78% of their power is from nuclear power plants. We all know about 3 Mile Island. That became almost like a Chernobyl. About 10 years ago, I had an opportunity to assist 22 Chinese missionaries. We went to Russia and opened the first Chinese evangelical Christian church in Moscow, and also the first Chinese evangelical Christian church in St. Petersburg, Presbyterian churches. And I was the only non-Chinese person and a Baptist, and they allowed me to come along, and I was the documentarian. And we spent the night in a Russian home. And I said to the man, "Can I have a glass of water?" And he goes, "Yeah, sure." And he then poured out of the tap and filled a gallon jug of water, and it was all dark yellow. And he went over to another gallon jug, and it had a roll of Charmin-like toilet paper, and it had this thing, and he poured the dark yellow water into it, and it went down, and it done, and I'm looking at this, and it wasn't nearly as yellow anymore. And then he said, "Not ready yet." And then he boiled it, and when he was done boiling it, he says, "Just a minute." And he then pulled some evidently sterile ice cubes out of the refrigerator, and he put it in there.
Well, I'm going to interrupt the program right there, but you can get the catastrophe gift offer by going to prophecyclub.com. I'll tell you more about it in a moment. Now from the Prophecy Club, some exciting opportunities for you. Today, we're making 3 DVDs available for a gift of just $25. The first one by Augusto Perez, End of Times. Topics are the Great Shaking, the Coming Famine, the Glory Cloud, the Coming Attack on the United States, the Great Darkness, the Super Devaluation of the Dollar, the Double Portion Outpouring, and how God will protect His own. Then, the Coming Pole Shift by Lloyd Carpenter. The Bible says that earthquakes will increase and the earth will turn upside down. Lloyd has studied the coming pole shift for over 20 years, and he says it is coming. And the topics are the earth's wobble, earthquakes, tsunamis, weather pattern changes, tornadoes, hurricanes, mudslides, floods and droughts, volcanoes, plate tectonics, seafloor spreading, hot spots, melting ice in the ring of fire, subduction zones, the scientific rationale for a pole shift, the Pacific Ocean and plate tectonics. Have earthquakes dramatically increased in the last 10 years? How does the Earth's rotation affect earthquakes? And John Moore, in Signs in the Sun, Moon, and the Stars, gives you a fascinating presentation using biblical, archaeological, scientific, and privileged government information to show you what is beginning to cause these signs in the sun, moon, and the stars. John proves the signs have already begun and will grow in intensity. He was an intelligence analyst for the U.S. Army and now a homicide detective and radio host. He has been investigating Earth changes since 2000 and has some startling discoveries. John has proof there is a mystery planet heading toward our solar system, which is causing ice caps to melt, stopping the Gulf Stream, causing tornadoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, extremely hot and cold weather. He says the governments of the world know about it and they're preparing underground survival facilities. Included in this presentation is a classified map showing safe locations. It's the catastrophes in Bible prophecy gift offer. End of Times, Augusto Perez. Coming pole shift, Lloyd Carpenter. Signs in the Sun, Moon, and Stars, John Moore. Valued at $90, All available for a gift of just $25. Call 785-266-1112 or prophecyclub.com. That's catastrophes in Bible prophecy gift offer. End of times, coming pole shift, signs in the sun, moon, and stars. All for a gift of $25.